physiology about it. That reflexivity, that circling, that spiraling, reflexivity is the most dominant fact about any of us. And if we don't deal with reflexivity, then we won't deal with a full person. As we metastate ourselves, the things that set the highest frame is going to be the attractors of the system. It's going to govern the system. It'll be the feedback loop that governs all the other feedback loops. So what's your highest intention? What's your highest pleasure? What's your highest value? What's your highest meaning? What's your highest belief? What's your highest outcome? What's your highest understanding? So your highest, when you just go to the highest of whatever, that will tend to be the attractor in your self-organizing system that pulls it all together. So a dynamic energy and finding that attractor. And that attractor will be semantically loaded. And when a person starts talking about it, they'll be glowing. They'll be radiating. Their whole physiology will be... And that's how you find the attractor. And if the attractor is toxic, if it's disbelief, if it's questioning, if it's paranoia, if it's fear, if it's revenge, if it's toxic, it keeps pulling the world in like a whirlwind. It just pulls in. It creates a magnetic core, as it were, and it attracts. And therefore, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the person on the inside, it feels real. And so, as in the movie The Matrix, when Neo jumped and he fell, and he comes back and he's in the chair and he's waking up and he notices he's bleeding. And he says to Morpheus, I thought you said it wasn't real. And he says, your mind makes it real. Your mind makes it real. So our system is designed to actualize. Our mind, body, emotion system is designed to actualize, to make real, to manifest whatever we're thinking, feeling, believing. Be it unto you as you believe. There's an ancient saying that summarizes that up. We seek to actualize it. So what we focus on, part of our focusing, where our mind goes and focuses in that attractor, what we focus on becomes what we bring into that world. So be careful what you focus on. This is why meta programs are so important, because they create that selective focus. Our responses at any given time is a function and a result of our meaning-making style. Our responses at any time to any body is a function of the meanings that we're giving and our meaning-making style. So if we want to have a new response, we change the way we do that. Neurosemantic energy accumulates in the middle of the matrix, and oftentimes, probably more often than not, it'll accumulate in the movie that we're playing. It'll accumulate in the movie. That's why I'm always asking, if I could peek into the movie theater of your mind, what's going on there? So that all of this abstract stuff gets translated into the movie. And if we step into the movie and that's our internal movie that's going on, it's going to really put us into state. So that's why NLP is very effective, because oftentimes just changing that movie has a ripple effect upward and downward, and then outward into the world. So that's why the movie mind is so critical. This operates as holons, parts inside of holes, inside of holes, inside of holes. So it's holographic. And the movie oftentimes is where you can project all of that into one picture. And sometimes a new picture at that level will change holographically the whole matrix. Matrix analysis, when we analyze a matrix and analyze the frames in a matrix, and analyze the games that we play, matrix analysis enables us to understand the leverage points. Do you know some leverage points now? It can be a glitch in the matrix. It can be something that just doesn't fit and that's out of place, and that we do a double take to look at it again. Some glitch, something that doesn't fit, might be a leverage point that we go in.
Well, I guess that's what we're doing now, but I sort of missed that yesterday. I was wondering if you could sort of briefly re-explain what a leverage point is, basically.
A leverage is like a rudder on a boat. A small movement will have such tremendous effect and change direction or change the very structure of something. So it could be changing at the highest level. That could be a leverage point. It could be a glitch, something that doesn't fit, and we go explore that. And that might be the very thing for that alignment. A leverage point could be, as it were, stepping out of this whole matrix, doing that step out, step back, and doing the systems check. Because when we step out, is this ecological? Is this healthy? Does this make life a party? Is this enhancing? Is this empowering? When we step out and do the systems check, a systems check is a great leverage. Moving up to the highest of anything, highest meaning, highest attention, highest value, highest pleasure. The highest also will give you some real leverage. The movie will give you leverage.
And that's a real skill to step out and step back.
Mm-hmm.
People don't intuitively know that. You have to train them to do that and coach them to do that.
Yeah. Stepping out, when we do the step out or the step back, when we do that, we are using our reflexivity in a very, very special way. It is taking the red pill.
When you do this with yourself, you have to do that. You're automatically. I mean, for me at least, I mean, how else would you do it? Except step out, check yourself, and step back in and continue the process.
Yeah. So we get exit from our old matrix when we, as it were, step back to look at it, to see what it is, and to recognize it as just a set of maps, just a set of frames within frames embedded. And that is really taking the red pill. Philosophers call that the infinite regress, and some people are scared of it. And when you step out, well, who is now looking at this? And if I step back to look at the looker who just looked, who's looking at this? But it's us operating at another level. It's us moving, and that's where multi-ordinality, that word we introduced a couple of days ago, multi-ordinality, it means something different at every level, and that we have levels or layers, and that's what makes our consciousness so rich.
When you're talking about step out, but then stepping out, is that dissociation?
I would not call it that.
Not just that, so it's a bigger...
And the reason I don't call it that is because in psychology, if you look in the DSM-4, dissociation is a disorder. So when NLP uses associate, dissociate, I hate that. Because every psychologist, every therapist, anybody who's been trained in the medical health field will hear, you're going to teach people to dissociate? That's a disorder. There are associations who are associations of dissociative disorders. And they have meetings here in Denver all the time. So don't use that word. I would recommend, have you heard me use that word? Let's step out. Because when you step out, you're not out of your body. There's no such thing as dissociation. Now, there are some people who believe that I'm not in my body. But just listen to them. They're in their body. They feel numb. They feel weird. They feel disowning their body. There's thoughts and feelings that they're in their body. But they have some different kind of friends. So I just don't use that word at all.
How do you define step out?
I'm going to step out into a larger, expansive awareness so that I become aware of, I've got maps, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm responding to, and this is the results I'm getting. Is that ecological? I'm stepping into a state of witnessing, a state of just observing, a state of appreciating myself, a state of acknowledging my self-worth. I'm stepping out. Every time you step out of joy, you're stepping into something, depression. When you're in depression, you've stepped out of joy. There's no such thing as dissociation. Whatever state you're in, you're out of some other ones. So it's just a matter of which one. So in NLP and the communication magic book, we call that a relative term. Dissociate from what to what. When we leave off the most important things. We turned it into normalization, dissociation. from what? To what?
And how about association?
Same
To
thing.
use, you just say
Step
that
in.
you're so focused on something.
Step in.
That's it.
Step into it. Step into it fully and completely. And be there, seeing, hearing, feeling. Step into it.
Is dissociation and association anywhere in anything NLP books? So somewhere I figured
Oh, it's in all the NLP
Okay,
books.
okay, that's why.
I used to write it in mine.
I was just wondering.
till I saw the light.
Now I can stop like crazy.
No, it's in all the NLP books. I personally just don't like the words because and if you talk to someone who's from the mental health profession, and you get some resistance from them, that's why. And so I think stepping in, stepping out is simple. And if you act like it's simple, well, let's step out of that state and just step into the state. Let's just watch that now and observe it. I've never found anybody who couldn't do that. You can even say, would you like to step into a state of just appreciation for self? Have you ever appreciated? Let's just step out into appreciation and look at that self-contempt. What do you think about it now? We don't have to make things hard for ourselves by using these big words and trying to sound scientific. So I would. You can see I've got some semantic energy with getting people to stop using that kind of terminology because I don't think it helps us. I think it just creates more difficulties. So stepping in, stepping out, and once we step in, stepping in also is how we integrate things. A lot of times we're just kind of halfway stepped in, halfway stepped out. A part of me is kind of observing it, but then there's some judgment. And half of me is inside of it, but not fully. And so the ability, what Denise said, stepping out is a skill that we have to really train ourselves in. Stepping in is also stepping in fully. We call that a genius state, when you step in there fully and just take it on. And living in that twilight zone, halfway in, halfway out, oftentimes is why we can't get things really deeply fully into our bodies.
So maybe a synonym, matrix, the matrix model with matrix is state, right? And that the model teases out the structure of that state, which is the matrix.
So it always starts here. This is the
It's
beginning.
an amalgamation of all of those.
Yeah, everything comes back to state. Everything comes to state. And so we've been teasing out all that's inside of mind, body, emotional states, and how our mind, body, nervous system creates this sense of reality, this fabric of reality for each of us.
We're stepping into different matrices the whole time.
So we were going through some of the principles of the matrix. Resistance, when you meet someone, their matrix is resisting you, I think you can jump to this conclusion that there is somehow inside that matrix a sense of danger. So that when anybody resists, somehow they are perceiving danger. So if you're going to coach to the matrix, you would want to make it feel safe for them and create a sense of rapport and connectionness. Symptomatology, symptoms that come out of here, physiological symptoms, mental symptoms. Symptomatology is a good way in, but it's a symptom, it's not the cause. And if you focus only on symptoms, you can solve symptoms, and then there'll be maybe another symptom coming out. So to get to the heart of it is to change the frames and to change the meanings we create and so forth. And here's another principle that I believe in. So the solution to any matrix is in the matrix. The solution to any matrix is inside the matrix. And that's why I'll just explore with someone to find their solution, because I believe they know it at some level.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. How does that compare with the other thought, which is the solution to a problem has got to be different than what caused the problem? In other words, that almost seems contradictory. In other words, that thought that whatever caused the problem, you have to have a different set of thinking to fix it, versus what you were mentioning, with changing the matrix or improving the matrix, you have to be in the matrix to do it. Or maybe I'm trying to...
Can I help?
Okay.
It's the different levels in the matrix. So So you're still in the matrix, but you jump to a different level in the matrix to solve the problem at this level.
Okay.
Yeah. So oftentimes, problem at one level can be solved when we move to a higher level. And in one sense, that's what we do with a step out. We step to a level of just witnessing this. We step to a level of appreciating myself as a person in spite of some behavior. And so, at what level is the problem? Is a significant question when you use the matrix model. At what level is the problem? In what matrix is there a problem? How is the meaning intention matrix operating? And so the solution to the matrix is in there. So here's just a summary of 6 things that coaching to the matrix, and this is not in your notes. No.
Okay, go slow.
Go slow.
Manual?
It's going to be on the video.
It'll be on the video.
I get royalties for selling those.
This is my way of training people that they can buy the manuals, but they won't get the real good stuff unless they come to the training.
Is it going to be on the final exam?
Yes, it'll be on the final exam. No, that's true. The test, when we do the test. Well, the first thing in coaching to a matrix is coach to the person's matrix. So sad. Find the person's matrix and coach to it. What is the person's style? What is the modus operandi? Still number one. What is their style? What's their modus operandi? Coach to their style, and we call that pacing, so we can then lead to truly understand it, find out how their matrix is working, where it's going. For the person working with someone, manager, coach, trainer, therapist, whatever, teacher, as we coach to a person's matrix, what we're wanting to do is to really enter into their world. So that's where rapport and connection and respect and honoring and witnessing and setting some pre-frames. Well, that is really interesting. How do you do that? And we enter in, and this is where we make it safe for them. So we coach to their matrix. The next thing is determine the matrix's depth. And this is why I use this one here as a diagram to talk about depth, because so oftentimes we talk about going up, going meta, going higher, getting a grander perspective, expanding our awareness. But as we do that, then determine the depth of the matrix. How much is installed and now in their body in terms of these content matrices? How deep is it? So when we work with a stutterer, it's very deep. It's in their body, it's in their neurology, so we have to use things like the drop down through and the movie rewind to get it out of neurology, because it's not just some thoughts that's toxic, but it's now inside them, and it has that depth, as it were.
What's the hierarchy of depth? Does it go worlds more shallow than time and others than?
No.
So how do you gauge how deep it is?
However much energy there is, whatever semantic loadedness, someone talks about something.
So it's not specifically quantifiable, but it's sort of on a subjective.
That's why we use the gauging question. How much of this is a problem? How
and
much
then they
do you
answer,
feel?
and you get a sense of it. Okay.
How unpleasant is this? How delightful is this? And so we let them gauge it, and then we also calibrate to how much energy there is. Yesterday, Chris allowed us to kind of enter into his matrix around work and hiring and managers. And when we first started, Chris was sitting back and just talking about, these rank and file, and it wasn't long before he was really engaged, And it meant something. It was significant. It's important. And there's values. And we found some of his highest intentions, that he wants to create a good place for people to work, and he wants to fit your values. And so there's that neurology, and it is in the world of work. So it can be very powerful, very dynamic. But we could interview Chris on other things, and we could find the same thing. That much energy. So
for each content matrix, there's different levels of depth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now what you're looking here for is the static frames that are holding the person in, right there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so in the stuttering it would be they'd have concepts in there that would be jammed in.
Yeah. And so when a person really goes into state, we use that phrase, they go into state. So it could be state around self or power others. It could be meaning state. When they go into state and they get locked up, you know that has some depth to it. So it's not just a shallow thing. It's not a superficial thing. There's some depth to it. Then we want to, once you find something and determine its depth, what's supporting it? And this is where we go explore around it. If it's just something playing on the theater of their mind, you can change that pretty quickly. Do some submodality shifts and you can pretty change it. But if it has some depth, then who do you need to be? What would be the most supporting frame that would support you as a person to handle that? What resources do you need? What would be the most resourceful supporting resources? What do you need to think about this other person or human nature so that you can handle this? And so we look to see what are the frames supporting the difficulty, the challenge, because that'll be the leverage points. That's why the swish pattern actually is a very powerful pattern. Think about the you. Here's this problem, you go into state, and it just happens automatically, and you start smoking, or you start overeating, or you do this, and it just happens, and this triggers you, and you know that it happens, it just comes upon you, and you find yourself there. But now think about the you, for whom that's no problem. Well, that's metastating. Let me think about the me in the self matrix. The me, let me edit that me. Oh, I like that. Let me edit some more. Let me step in through. That's not quite. I need something else. So step out and edit some more in and step in. And you edit the me for whom that's no problem. And then you step back here. Every time I see this trigger, now you're directionalizing mind. And it's a very powerful pattern because it's using a very core thing, a resourceful me. And it's telling myself, I can see, I can imagine, I can experience a me for whom no problem. And so we build up new frames that's going to move us. If our brain knows how to move to the unresourceful, we can move on to the resourceful.
In this movie that I was telling you about, it explained how in the brain, the hypothalamus creates certain peptides that go through the blood to the cells, and then the cells have those receptor sites, and people actually develop chemical addictions to certain emotions and different substances and whatever. So with this is all sort of a conscious attempt to sort of take control of that or be less affected by that. And is that it seems almost like the chemical addiction would be stronger than, or initially might be stronger than your choice to change it. But if you can, I guess the process is building up your ability to really increase that state and amplify it and know your intention and take charge. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. It's a system. That's why if somebody is in such an emotional state that they can't even think clear, we give them some chemicals so that they can think clear and change that frame. So now if we medicate without that, if we medicate and just medicate, then there's no new learning. So sometimes we have to medicate. But your mind will create peptides and neurotransmitters and hormones, and all you have to do is just think about something really dangerous, and the blood drawn from brain to stomach, and the hormones are sent off, and the adrenaline, and we go into that state.
So through this process, it's actually creating the same effect. You're just creating new peptides and new, but it's actually still producing it because you visualize it, you make it.
Yeah. So determining, number 2 is determining the matrix's depth and look at what supports it, because the frames that support it will be some of the leverage points you'll want to work on changing. Number 3 is look for the information loops. So you just ask some real basic questions. What is the feedback, feed forward loop at the primary level? Feedback, feed forward. What is the primary state feed forward feedback? What is the meta feedback, feed forward? So look for those loops. What's going on there? And oftentimes in dragon slaying, we say, as a metaphor, listen for the person feeding the dragon. What's some of the dragon food? Oh, I'll never amount to anything. I want you to kick away that food dish and quit feeding that dragon for a week and let's see how you feel. Quit feeding the dragon that. So we look for that that loop, that feedback loop, and that's where those thinking patterns, those cognitive distortions become really important as we look for those feedback loops. How open are the feedback loops? How closed are the feedback loops? How fast? How slow? How healthy? How toxic are those feedback loops? The fourth thing is transformation is mostly reorganization rather than elimination. Transformation, changing it, altering it, reloading a new matrix, is more reorganizing than eliminating, making things go away. So you've experienced that. Breathe that in. Just breathe that in. Do you need to have any message? Well, no, breathe it out. And so instead of making something go away, we just reorganize it. We restructure it. We give it new meanings. And in this sense, working with the matrix and neurosemantics, NLP, becomes a very kinder, gentler kind of process because we don't presuppose there's bad stuff. We presuppose that some frame is just not useful in this context. So we don't want anger to go away, but we don't want anger turned against self. We want anger to deal with the outside world. We don't want fear to go away. We just don't want to be afraid of our own selves and our own experiences. We want fear. So we reorganize rather than eliminate. And that's why the transformation sometimes can occur very quickly. You find that leverage point, and it's just a tweak in the system, and suddenly it's reloaded and upgraded.
And not only, I'm just now thinking, not just is it more than elimination is a very small part. In fact, when we're working, using the meta model, it's opening things they've deleted. And
they're opening new things they've deleted.
Or taking things that were distorted and making them more accurate with the territory.
Yeah. The fifth one is, and some of you will like this, the matrix is a hypnotic phenomenon. Have we been doing hypnosis this week? So sometimes somebody will say, as Harrison just said, it looks like all this is just conscious work. Is it? Because the matrix is the unconscious. Every frame that you live inside of is outside of consciousness until you become aware of it. Which is why the whole process here, some of the healing, some of the leverage point is just mindfulness. Oh, that's what I'm doing. So the matrix is a hypnotic phenomenon. It is created by how we make meaning. What we hallucinate are meanings. Have you ever seen rudeness? Could you put rudeness in a wheelbarrow? Niceness? Have you ever seen niceness? You ever seen charm? These are not things out there. There are hallucinations. And shared hallucinations sometimes. But it's all hypnotic in that sense. So it's not explicit, but we use hypnotic processes like relaxation, guided imagery, and then language itself is hypnotic.
That's 6?
No, this is 5. That the whole thing is a hypnotic phenomenon. So what you're working with are hypnotic phenomenon. Language itself, when you start creating that movie in your mind, you're hallucinating. So the whole thing is hypnotic. And once we recognize that and work with that, then it seems that we can bring some of those skills, those tools for that.
Michael, just could you give me that this is a broader definition of hypnotic than I've had before.
Okay.
So could you just sort of define that the way you're describing it?
The better word is trance.
Okay.
And trance means I've transitioned from a sensory awareness state, uptime state, to an in-time or downtime state. I've transitioned.
From an uptime...
So uptime is this. Uptime is sensory awareness. I'm seeing, I'm hearing on the outside. And I'm aware of things. I'm present to the moment. And then when I go inside, and I don't see the outside world for the most part, and I've got my pictures going, and I've got my memories going, I transitioned from the outside state to the inside state. We call that uptime or downtime. Downtime is really being inside the matrix so much that we're not here So trance, there's the highway trance as you're driving along and you're in the highway trance. The elevator, have anybody done the elevator trance with some of these slow elevators around here? The stoplight trance, you go there and you just and you're doing work at home, or you're thinking about what you're going to do that evening, or you're working
and then
you're
not green and you just go.
And then some people still stay in trance. So trance is such a everyday common phenomenon. It's not a mysterious, weird thing. So hypnosis is where most of us live. Most of us don't need to have hypnosis done to us. We need to be dehypnotized. And working with the matrix, we're dehypnotizing, coming out of those old matrices, old trances, those post-hypnotic suggestions or frames, so that we can reload and update our matrix.
Yeah, a good movie that relates to this whole scenario that we're dealing with is Pleasantville. And it starts out in black and white in the 50s when that was pretty much the way things were. And then little by little people start seeing color. You're colored! You're colored! Oh, somebody's colored!
How many have seen Pleasantville? Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a good study for brain.
Yeah.
Is another kind of word like going on automatic and you're driving home and you don't really see anything.
You get all, you might even miss your stop or something because you're so automatically.
Okay. We're in trance.
Right.
We're at a light hypnotic state.
It's hard to stay out of that activity like this.
Yeah.
Consciously do it.
Yeah. So Richard Bandler said at the beginning of NLP that all communication is hypnosis. John Grinder said none of it. There's no such thing as hypnosis. There's just two ways of looking at the very, very same thing. Well, the last point here on coaching to the matrix, using the matrix, is what I mentioned a little bit earlier. The solution is inside the matrix. The solution is inside the matrix. So if you enter to the matrix, we'll find the solution there and be able to work with the person. Usually difficulties will be the person's strengths overdone, or some weakness that just needs to be addressed in some way. So the solution is inside the matrix, and as we enter into and facilitate a person just to become more and more aware, there's the natural learning, the natural growth, the intuitive wisdom inside makes adjustments to get cleaner in that sense.
How did you say that is strengths overdone and weakness is what?
Weakness is unaddressed. Weakness is despised. So we will not even address or work on, play to them to develop. Oh, there's one other thing before I do that. I'm trying to do a few things to catch up, just to identify a few things. In the matrix of others, we talked about the social panorama. Some of you had some real tremendous effects with the social panorama, and we could spend time talking about the beliefs we have about people, human nature, human destiny. But there's another facet I want to mention, and I played off of it a little bit yesterday, and that is when we work together as a group, when more than one mind is constructing reality. And so I want to talk about when people come together to create social reality, shared reality. So that when a number of people do that, and when we have a group of people who come together over a period of time and a period of years, and they have a group consciousness, that this group consciousness then is setting some frames about different things. And John Searle calls the primary state level the brute facts. The brute facts. And with these brute facts, these are the things that you can see, hear, and feel. It'd be empirical reality, so it's the primary state. To give an illustration, here's a ball field, maybe a soccer field, football field, baseball field, and there's some lines drawn. And a man is running down that field kicking a ball, and all of a sudden the ball goes inside of a net. And you look around and the stadium is full of people, and everybody is cheering on one side and maybe doing the wave. And a point. The brute fact is the man, the ball, the lines, the green grass, the running. But what is point linguistically? If you use the meta model, what is point?
Nominalization.
Kind of like a nominalization. Point. So John Searle said that, and his description, his formula is X counts as Y in C. Now, those of you who've taken Accessing Personal Genius, I have that in the Accessing Personal Genius manual, just to explain a little bit about the construct of social reality, that here's this X, and it counts as a Y term, concept, belief, understanding. In this instance, it counts as a point. That brute fact counts as Y, so we're going to frame it as, that was a point. So Fido the dog is watching this man, so he sees, here's all the crowd, so he's all excited. The next day, man comes running down, kicks the ball, and goes into the net, and nobody's yelling. In fact, there's hardly anybody there, because it was practice. Because the point occurred inside of game. And if it was practice, it didn't count. Well, the referees might come in and say, yes, we're playing the game. It's an official game, and it could have been a point, but in this instance, it's not a point because of the rules of the game allow this exception or that exception. And so some referee or some official has some power, some status to make a ruling, and the crowd might throw a fit, and the other side of the crowd might really be glad for that ruling that he makes. Or later on, some governing board re-examines a singular point that won the game and disqualifies it because of some rule. And now we've got a structure of social reality. X counts as Y in this C, this context, this context, this context, this context, this context, so that Y1, Y2, these meta terms, he has C all the way up, the contexts, but that we together create social reality. What counts as a raise in a certain business? What counts as having contributed to the value of a company in a certain context? What counts as respect in a certain culture? What brute fact becomes a social fact? Becomes an organizational fact. So here's another word, the word fact. Could you have facts about a fact? Multirenality, levels. So John Searle, in his book, The Construct of Social Reality, uses this formula to be able to model out how a culture, any culture, business culture, racial culture, ethnic culture, the culture of victimhood, any culture, the NLP culture, any culture work. How does a culture, who creates culture? And how do we create culture? So John Searle has added another word that I've added to the meta model that's not in the meta model, because these words are strange kind of words. That Fido the dog at the primary level never enters into this reality, this matrix, because it's a shared construct that we've come together. And John Searle calls this a speech act. He says that some words are not representational. Most words are representational. When you say dog, I represent puppy dog running around. When I say the word green grass, field, lines, balls, we make a movie of that stuff. It's representational. But some words don't lead to representation. They lead to the construct of reality. So when you go into a court, I pronounce you innocent. I pronounce you guilty. I pronounce you husband and wife. I crown thee the ship's Queen Mary. I adjourn the meeting. I call the meeting to order. That these words are not for the purpose of representing something, but they make it so. Sometimes the words we say are speech acts that actually call into being at that very moment a social reality that didn't exist the moment before. So when you got married, when you get married, the moment after the minister or whoever says the words, "I pronounce you husband and wife," that moment afterwards, if someone says, "Do you feel married?" Because now we got a social fact or an institutional fact of married. Do you feel married? Well, no, I've just been married that long. I haven't lived in this reality too much. So there's social facts above brute facts and organizational. If you were out for a walk, that's a brute fact. You're walking. But have you gone for a walk? Let's go for a walk. So when you agree upon it, it becomes a social fact. When many people agree with it and designate it as something special, marching for dimes. In this country, it's a walk for a particular charity. So different levels of facts. An interesting thing about this is that at this level, you can wear things out. We wear clothes out, we wear cars out, kick that ball long enough and the ball gets worn out, the grass gets worn out. And so brute facts wear out. An interesting thing, meta-facts never wear out. Let me go on a little bit and we'll come back. Meta-facts don't wear out. So how do you change social reality? How do you change cultures? Well, if you try to change it at the brute fact level, because social reality is not at the brute fact level, but it's at the meta level. And that's why use at this level reinforces the reality. And disuse causes it to become irrelevant. Once upon a time, brute fact, man having horse with sword, good fighter, could be designated a knight. If he had 50 men that would follow him, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 50 men that would follow him, and he was a good fighter, and he would say, "Follow me," and they would follow him, he would be a knight. Later on, some people wanted to be knights. The wannabe knights. And so they had some money, and they had some prestige, and they said, just knight me. Yes, I'm not good at sword fighting, and I don't know if anybody will follow me, and riding a horse, it hurts, but I want to be a knight. So somebody would say, "I knight thee." We've had the Queen knighting some people recently. You're a knight.
Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg. So a person has the status of a knight, but doesn't do the function. So this leads to some more social things. There is status, there is function, and there is status function in social realities, in cultures, social functions. So somebody could be a good fighter and ride the thing and have 100 men follow him, but never be designated a knight. Somebody could have the status and not do it, and somebody could have the status and the function. In our society, a medical doctor in training in med school could stop on the side of the road where there was an accident, go over and they say, "Is there a doctor?" and say, "Well, I haven't been designated yet. I've been in training. I could fix it." And they might do something to save someone's life. He could have the function, but not the status function yet. An old doctor could come who had the status, but maybe be forgetful or not know how to do it, been out of practice for years and years. And so the different roles inside. We're going to create a social reality this afternoon. I'm going to, for some of you, give you a certificate that'll say, "I designate you a neurosemantic practitioner. I knight thee and crown thee neurosemanticist." Well, where do I get the power to do that? Who gave me the right to do that? Well, see, when we construct social reality, it is a shared reality that we come together and we say there's some rules and there's the structure of how we put it together and how we recognize and honor and acknowledge and create a sense of credibility as we create social realities. So all of this is part of the others matrix, and it's a matrix we all live in. How many social realities do you live in? School, education, culture, religion, ethnic. How many cultures? And now we have a way of modeling cultures. I've been working on modeling the culture of victimhood and empowerment. On the website, you'll see a 28-page document on the games Hitler played, because I wanted to see how did that come together economically, politically, and other things. And what were the games Hitler played? And so I identified those games, the frames that created that, and how he seduced a whole nation to come play that game for a while with him. And so modeling different cultures. We got, this stuff on culture modeling.
It's almost like nominalization is a multi-ordinal term. So it sounds like this is a nominalized nominalization. You know what I mean? Creating this social...
Yeah. So how real is any culture? It's as real as there's people who will keep refreshing the frames. How do we change culture? Well, as we create new frames and think, we can make things irrelevant. How did we make some brute facts irrelevant, like the horse and buggy or other things? As something becomes more relevant, more useful, more powerful, other things just drop out as irrelevant, and people don't keep it going.
It's kind of interesting because in Canada there's this phenomenon of protecting Canadian culture. And because it's going away, they create laws to try to protect it. It's big in Quebec, protect the French language. You create sign laws. You can't have signs in English and you can't have them in French. And I've always said, if you have to protect it, it's gone already. It's no longer part of the culture. It's already changing. It's too late.
Now we really can't legislate the frames and that kind of a thing. There is that fluidity. So here's a whole other thing. I do 5 days on this, on cultural realities and modeling, because I think it's a whole new area for us to go into. And there's all kinds of things. If there's any book that I would really recommend for understanding change in a culture, it's The Tipping Point by Gladwell. I can't think of his name now. The Tipping Point. It was published in the year 2000 by a journalist who looked at social phenomenon, and his point was that almost everything is changed from the bottom up. It's changed by one person catching a vision and setting frames and believing in something, and it's spreading. And we could spend a lot of time talking about that. Maybe we'll do that late this afternoon after some of them are gone. And we'll get to the good stuff then. But you can see that it's part of the matrix. And there's structure to it, there's process to it, and if we know how it works, like anything else, if you know how it works, you can enter into it, spoil it, reframe it, remodel it, reload it in new and wonderful ways. Okay?
You can't legislate. It's something that you have to kind of change minds or change frames. I'm thinking of when they were trying to legislate laws for helping African Americans or to be equal. So you have to change the frames. People have to change their minds before that really becomes such a reality.
The tipping point. You get to critical mass. You get to critical mass, whether it's in your family, whether it's in a small group, whether it's in a large group, a corporation, business, whether it's at a national level. And that's where one person can be a pioneer and a leader, whether it's a Mandela in prison writing, whether it's a Martin Luther King making speeches, whether it's a Jesus walking around giving speeches about loving your brother. So just one person catching can lead to that critical mass.
This leads to the observation of what's going on in Afghanistan and Iraqi, especially Iraqi.
Okay,
I don't agree. I'm cutting your throat. So the question is, when people get killed off because they don't follow these certain social rules, how do leaders use this model to make society better or help society become better? That's where I want to take it.
Yeah. In the movie The Matrix, if you saw the movie, there was a scene in the train station when they go back in to rescue Morpheus, and Morpheus is taken out, and so is Trinity, and Neo is left there, and the phone that he's on is shot, so he can't make his exit. And then he meets Mr. Smith, and he stands up, and instead of running like he always had run, he turns to face Mr. Smith, and they have that wild and wonderful battle there in this train station. And on the outside, Trinity says to Morpheus, "What is he doing?" And Morpheus says, "He's beginning to believe." He's beginning to believe. Have that big fight, and then he takes care of Mr. Smith for a little while, Agent Smith, and then he runs to find his exit. And on his way out, as he comes to the exit, of course he's late, and so he gets shot. And after he gets shot, he on the outside is in that chair. And Trinity is there. And as he's there on the outside, she says some words to him that are some really moving words that starts to change the movie. She says, and she whispers in his ear while he's dead inside the Matrix, she says, "I'm not afraid anymore. Neo, please listen to me. I promise to tell you the rest. The Oracle, she told me that I'd fall in love, and that man, the man I loved, would be the one. You see, you can't be dead, Neo. You can't because I love you. You hear me? I love you." And with that, he, of course, awoke. And then she said, get up, get up. And then he, at that point, became the master of the Matrix. It was as he stood up and took that breath, and the whole world moved in and out. It responded to him. It responded to his thinking, his feeling. And when the three agents started shooting, and he said, "No." And he stopped the world. He stopped the world. And the bullets were like shining little stars. And he looked at them, and then he let it drop. He just let his Matrix, the old Matrix he was in, just drop. Because the prediction was that the one would be able to master the Matrix and make it after his will, change it as he willed. And so then when Agent Smith come up to fight him, he could just have one hand behind his back and just in slow motion. Earlier he was being trained, and he says, "What do you mean? I'll be faster than bullets?" And Morpheus said, "When the time comes, you won't have to be." So in the old matrix of our mind, the old matrix that tortures us, the old frames, when you know it's frames, when you know I'm the meaning maker, when maybe love wakes you up, maybe when someone else believes in you more than you believe in you, which is what coaching's all about, for us to find someone and believe in their potentials and hold them until things are unleashed that they never imagined possible. So when you become the master of your matrix, the matrix serves you and starts to change and starts to alter. There was a great scene when Neo met the Oracle. Before he met the Oracle, it had been set up several times. Well, is Morpheus going to take you to the Oracle? She'll tell you what's going to happen. When he meets the Oracle, of course, the Oracle is not as he expected. It's like a 1950s kitchen, and she's baking cookies. And she seems kind of, just everything you wouldn't expect with an Oracle. Before he walked into her, he met the little boy floating the spoon in the air, and he said, "There is no spoon. It's not the spoon that bends, it's you who bends. It's you who bends." He walks in, and she does notice that there's a sign on the kitchen door, "Know thyself." If you want to master your matrix, know thyself. And as she starts to talk with him, she throws out lots and lots of little disorienting statements. She says, "I'd ask you to sit down, but you're not going to anyway, and don't worry about the vase." "What vase?" He turns, and the vase falls on the floor, And she said, I said, don't worry about it. I'll get one of my kids to fix it later. Neil says, how did you know? What's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you have broken it if I hadn't said anything? You're cuter than I thought. I can see why she likes you. Who? Not too bright, though. You know why Morpheus brought you here to see me? So, and he nods, and she says, so, what do you think? Do you think you're the one? Honestly, I don't know, he says. And then she points to the sign, Know Thyself. Being the one is just like being in love. Nobody can tell you that you're in love. You just know it, through and through, balls to bone. Then she said, well, I better look at you. And she gets him to open his mouth and go, and she kind of does that stuff. And she says, now I'm supposed to say, very interesting. But then you say, Neil says, but what? But you already know what I'm going to say. He says, I'm not the one. Sorry, kid. You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something. And so that ends that little section there. She doesn't say that he's not the one. He says that. That's his fear. That's his apprehension. And when he says that, she says, sorry, kid. She says, you have the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something. I believe you have the gift to be the one in your matrix. Are you waiting for anything?
Not anymore.
I'd like to get in groups of 4 and to share what you have been waiting for, what you may be waiting for, what gift you have to be the one, to be the master of your matrix, and what resource you need so that you don't have to wait anymore. Because some of us have waited and waited, fearful that we might be the one for our matrix. And so when let's get into groups of 4 and just very quickly, without a lot of talking, just really highlight, what have I waited for in my life? What have I been waiting for? And if you're still waiting a little bit, what am I waiting for? And then what do you need? As you identify, what are you waiting for? What is that resource that you're waiting for to be the master of your matrix? So we'll do this very quickly. We'll just do this like in 7 minutes, so we'll go really round. So groups of 4.